Hey, how's it going? As technology gets better and better, it's becoming increasingly obvious that at some point, warfare is going to expand into the domain of space. And I don't just mean some kind of cyber warfare or whatever, I mean like actual blowing stuff up type of warfare. As much as I'm sure we'd all like space to be the common heritage of mankind or whatever, realistically, wherever there are resources, there are reasons to blow each other up. Now, you might not like that fact, I don't necessarily like that fact, but it is a fact, and that fact raises the question of how exactly is that going to happen? Now, depending how far into the future you want to talk about, that's potentially a bottomless subject, but if we limit what we're talking about to specifically the space infrastructure that humanity already has, then it basically becomes a conversation about satellite warfare. So here's my question. How do you shoot down a satellite? Let's talk about it. So satellite warfare is already a fairly broad subject. We can talk about space-to-space warfare, space-to-ground warfare, ground-to-space warfare, air-to-space warfare, space-to-air warfare. There's a lot of different things that can happen. So for the purposes of this video, let's talk about shooting down an adversarial satellite. Now you'll do this with an ASAT, or an anti-satellite weapon. That's just the term we use to describe a weapon used to shoot down a satellite. Now there are no ASAT systems that have been used in actual warfare before, but there are several countries like India, Russia, China, and the United States who have successfully shot down their own satellites to demonstrate that they have this capability. Now ideally, you won't want to overuse this, because if you blow up a satellite, you're generating space debris which can collide with other satellites to generate more space debris until you end up with a cascading situation that produces Kessler syndrome. Kessler syndrome isn't super likely to happen in the near-term future, but let's not tempt fate, we know what current events are like. Anyway, there's been a lot of different ASAT systems developed over the decades. Back in the late 50s, the US developed the Bold Orion, which was a ballistic missile launched from a B-47 bomber. The missile didn't have guidance precise enough to get a direct hit, so the concept assumed it would have a nuclear warhead in it, so a near miss would be sufficient. They did test it, it passed within like 6.5 kilometers of a satellite, so yeah, probably close enough to do its job if it had a nuke in it, but having to nuke a satellite every time you want to knock one out of orbit is not necessarily ideal. In the 60s, the Soviets developed the IS system, which would launch into orbit and fairly slowly maneuver towards the target satellite before detonating a fragmentation warhead, so it didn't have to be super precise, it just kind of got vaguely nearby. Also in the 60s, the United States decided to try using Thor ballistic missiles with a nuclear warhead as a means to knock out satellites. If you've heard of Starfish Prime, yeah, just that. Now the coolest ASAT was the ASM-135 air-launched kinetic kill missile. This was tested on the 13th of September 1985, where an F-15 Eagle fired this missile at the Solwind, which was a military research satellite that they literally just didn't need anymore, so they just used it as the target and blew it up, which makes pilot Wilbert Pearson the first fighter jet pilot in human history to get an air-to-space kill, which is possibly the coolest f***ing thing that's ever happened. Honestly, I'm mainly making this video because I just wanted to talk about this. Anyway, the way the US would actually do this now is with naval ballistic missile defense interceptors. Basically, one of their cruisers just shoots a missile made by Raytheon up straight into space and f***ing blows up a satellite. Again, this has been tested already and it works, so that's realistically how this is going to go down if a scenario comes up in the future where they need to do that. The Soviets were also developing an air-launched missile, but now Russia will just use ground-launched direct-ascent ASATs if they need to do this. So it seems like we've all settled on the probably more sensible but also lamer solution. Come on man, I just want fighter jets in space. I know that's tremendously impractical to the point of probably being actually impossible to do, but also, have you thought about the fact that it would be cool as fuck? Think about it. Sorry to interrupt, this is just a quick message to say, statistically speaking, you're probably not subscribed, so I'll make you a deal. Press the subscribe button and I won't come over to your house and do this. Oh no! Alright, thanks. Back to the video. China also has ASAT capability. There's one called the HQ-29, which was publicly observed during a military parade in 2025. It's an anti-ballistic missile, but it's possibly also an ASAT. They also have the Dongning-3, which is a high-altitude missile interceptor with, again, potential ASAT capability. They did high-altitude interceptor tests in 2013 and 2018, believed to simulate ASAT missions. And also, China's oldest system is the SC-19, which is a derivative of an existing ground-launched solid-fuel medium-range ballistic missile. They conducted a test in 2007 and had a successful intercept, and it produced over 40,000 pieces of space debris, which to this day we still have to keep track of. Again, it's probably not that big of a deal to have some space debris, because space is big. Like 40,000 sounds like a lot, but also like, imagine 40,000 things scattered all over the surface of the Earth. That's still tiny compared to the size of the Earth, but still, it's probably not great. Oh, and lastly, there is also the Indian one. Mission Shakti tested the PDV Mark II anti-ballistic missile. This was 2019, so fairly recent, and at this point people really were getting wise to the fact that space debris is not great, because this particular test did really spark concerns about how much space debris it created. In this instance, the test was conducted at a low orbital altitude to try and ensure that the resulting debris would decay and fall back into Earth fairly shortly, like hopefully within a few weeks. It is apparently fairly unlikely that any of the debris lasted for longer than a year, but it is possible that some of that debris got boosted up into a higher orbit and is still persisting now. Like, not super likely, but possible. I'm not really sure what the solution is to not having to test these anymore, because more countries are going to want this capability, they'll develop it independently, and then they will want to test it, and also demonstrate that they have the capability. But if every country does that every time they develop any new system, surely that's going to catch up with us sooner or later. I don't know, maybe not. Let me know what you think in the comments. I suppose we could just make it international law that you don't do that, but international law doesn't really seem to count for much these days. I suppose going forward, some kind of cyber warfare might be the way to deal with this sort of thing. If you can do a cyber attack on a country and it prevents it from accessing its satellites, I guess you don't need to blow up the satellite, and also that's cheaper for the country that does the cyber attack. Maybe, but if I'm honest, I know basically nothing about cyber warfare, so you'll have to go ask a fucking nerd. Anyway, as always, I want to say thanks to my elite level supporters: Thunderbolt22A10, who blinks diagonally; Nomad Greg, who eats a bowl of nails for breakfast every morning without any milk; Andrew Mole, who can use his ears to inflate a balloon; John Bejarano, who doesn't believe in the number 57; JDK, who's cracked the secret code hidden throughout all of my videos; Mutantious Doom, who commutes to work in one of those tripods from War of the Worlds; Stormester Ritter, whose favourite meal is a double dog witch, which is just 3 dogs stood next to each other; Nikita Lurie, who's in the middle of a messy divorce with a strange crustacean-like alien from Alpha Centauri; Aaron Rowe, who killed Jeffrey Epstein by force choking him; Bonk Chunk, who never got the hang of Wednesdays; that one boy who duplicates himself every time you look away; and thanks to all my other supporters too. Don't forget to join the Patreon or the channel membership if you want to be featured in my video credits or chat on Discord, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Over and out.